So I hate to be the bearer of bad news. Mass layoffs were predicted, and now mass layoffs have started. Millions of Americans are ill prepared for what's about to happen, whether that's their lack of an emergency savings fund that they can tap into if and when their employer lays them off, how they're going to deal with their car repayments, their mortgage repayments, paying for food, water, gas, electricity. How are they going to cope even when they're struggling to do so with a job? How will they cope if they're unemployed? Well, this is what we're going to look at here today, because many Americans are now starting to feel concerned about the potential threat of being laid off. So we'll take a look at all of this in this video, and very specifically, why the US federal government could be the largest employer that lays off the most people. So we'll take a look at all of this and what's going on and what we can foresee going into 2025. But before we do, it takes just 2 seconds. If you're new around here and you enjoy this video, please do consider hitting the like and subscribe button down below. And without further ado, let's get into it. So yes, it's always incredibly concerning anytime you see signs for mass layoffs taking place, because it's a traditional indicator that thousands of people are going to be affected by it. But, and here's the interesting thing, President Trump, who often touts himself as being all about job creation and bringing back jobs that were previously lost to other countries, is now overseeing mass layoffs taking place within the federal government. Take a look at this. Doge's power expands as federal agencies start planning large-scale layoffs. Now, what does this mean? Well, if you work for the federal government in any department, whether it's Social Security, in parks, the Department for Transportation, wherever it may be, there are now going to be significant changes to both the size and the structure of your departments. Let's continue down here. If we look here, you can see agency leaders have been told to begin preparations for large-scale layoffs, known as reductions in force, or RIFs, under an executive order President Donald Trump signed on Tuesday. They will work with Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, known as Doge, to carry out the mandate, expanding the role of the billionaire's team in reshaping federal government operations. Now, what we know is that the federal government has approximately 2.4 million people working there currently. And when you read the plans put in place by Elon Musk and the Trump administration, of course you can imagine that it's going to spark concern amongst the federal workers, because now we could see hundreds of thousands of people laid off all at once. That's troubling, but the plans are now being actioned as we speak. Take a look at this. In a flurry of activity at the end of the week, the Trump administration fired more than 10,000 federal workers across multiple agencies as part of its large-scale reductions in the government workforce. 10,000 workers, and this is likely only to be the start. If we take a look here, the initial firings focused on, but weren't exclusive to, employees in their first year of the federal job, as they lack the ability that longer-term employees have to appeal their terminations, coupled with about 75,000 workers who took President Trump's buyout offers. The job cuts amount to nearly 4% of the federal government's 2.3 million workers. Now, it will be very interesting to see just how many workers both Donald Trump and Elon Musk feel like they can do without in the federal government, because if they were to say reduce the workforce from 2.4 million down to just 400,000, and there didn't appear to be any drop in terms of the standard of work being produced or the productivity levels, at that point, questions would be asked as to why there was such a massive overhiring process of 2 million additional workers when the work could have just been done by 400,000 people. And that, case in point, would be the perfect case study for Elon Musk and Doge to say, we're doing the right thing, because we've laid off 2 million workers, because the work that was being done could have just been done by 400,000 workers, so we've saved money. But that's what's happening in the federal government. What about what's happening in the US economy? Meta is carrying out performance-based layoffs starting on Monday, cutting 5% of their staff. Workday are laying off 1,700 employees affected by cuts, or 8.5% of their total workforce. Google are offering voluntary buyouts to hardware and platform teams. But it's not just the tech sector. JP Morgan Chase begins planned layoffs for 2025. Fewer than 1,000 employees are going to be laid off in February alone. But these layoffs are a part of what they're calling the regular management of the business, adding that the bank still has 14,000 open positions. So they're going to lay 1,000 people off, and they have 14,000 open vacancies. Bit strange, but it's the manufacturing industry, specifically the automobile industry, that's the most interesting one here, because that has direct correlation to what Donald Trump has done with the tariffs that he's put in place on Mexico and Canada. Many companies are now citing concerns that they're not going to be able to get the parts that they need to produce the goods in the United States unless they can buy them from Mexico and Canada without the tariffs added on. Now, Ford in particular have been very vocal about this. Ford CEO says tariffs over Canada and Mexico could, quote, blow a hole in the US auto industry over the long term. Ford CEO Jim Marley said on Tuesday that President Donald Trump's tariff push has so far brought a lot of cost and a lot of chaos to the auto industry, despite the president's aims to help the industry. Farley also said that if Trump's 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada are implemented and remain in effect for the long term, it would blow a hole in the US auto industry, specifically with rivals from Asia and Europe poised to benefit. And matters certainly haven't been helped when President Trump has also now announced tariffs on all steel and aluminium entering the United States. Because now for companies like Ford or any other car manufacturer that gets their steel or aluminium from other countries, now they have to pay the tariff on top of that as well. So that is what's going to cripple the auto industry the most. And these actions will all be inflationary. If companies have to pay more to get the parts they need to make their products, that cost is going to be passed on to the end customer in the final price. For example, let's say you were going to buy a brand new car and prior to Trump's tariffs, it was priced at $100,000. Now, the company has to pay an additional 25% tariff on top after Trump's tariffs take effect, and they then pass that cost to you in the final bill. What was $100,000 initially, after a 25% tariff on top, will now cost you, the end customer, $125,000. The price has gone up. The action is inflationary. As a result of that, anytime we get inflation, the Federal Reserve has to increase the interest rates to counteract the inflation. And if the interest rates go up, businesses are less likely to borrow money, they're less likely to invest, they're more likely to cut costs, because when interest rates go up, spending goes down. Consumers won't be going out to buy products anymore whilst the inflation is still high. If the interest rates go up, they're more likely to save their money in the bank, because then they're going to get more money back as a result. And so far as cutting costs is concerned, employees are more likely to be fired and laid off. That's the harsh reality behind it. So the reality of the situation is this: mass layoffs are starting, and the American people are ill-prepared, because so many of the population don't have a 6-month emergency fund. If you don't know what that is, we spoke about that in the previous video, so please do go ahead and check that out as well. But basically, you need to know how much your monthly expenses are, how much you need to get by in terms of buying groceries, buying gas, buying electricity, all that kind of stuff. You need to be able to make sure that you can stay afloat and stay in a decent financial position for at least 6 months while you look for another job. Let's say you spent around about $5,000 every single month. This includes your car, your food, water, rent, utilities, everything. Around $5,000 a month. If you're prepared, it usually takes you around 3 months to get a new job after getting laid off. So you need to make sure you're financially stable for those 3 months. So 5,000 times 3, you need to make sure you have $15,000 saved away somewhere. But that's just your small emergency fund. But we've spoken before on this channel that not everyone finds work within 3 months after being laid off. Sometimes it takes much longer. So you need to make sure you're covered for the eventuality that you could be looking for work after 3 months. That is where months 4 to 6 also need covering. So, you have $15,000 for months 1 to 3, you will need another $15,000 for months 4 to 6. So in total, you should have $30,000 saved away as your average emergency savings fund. And although 6 months worth of emergency funds may seem like a bit of a stretch, you just never know in today's economy. If businesses stop hiring completely, you could also then potentially be looking at being out of work for longer than 6 months as well. So it really depends on your own personal and financial situation how much you need to save in your emergency savings fund. Thank you all for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Drop a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts on the whole situation. You know, these layoffs are coming and I'll do my best to keep you all updated over the coming weeks and months. But until then, see you all later and take care.